Hello, moon babies. It's Molly, and welcome to your April edition of Grimoire Club. So today we're going to continue rolling with our Earth Magic theme that we've been going with this month, and we're going to work with making our own stamps. This is going to be a stamp-based spread, and we're just going to use some really basic materials, things you probably don't even have to go to the craft store for, things that you could find at the drugstore. Now, I'm not usually a big fan of stamping, generally because they tend to be really expensive, and most of the time when you purchase them in the store, they're so specific that they're just subject matter that I'm not terribly interested in, and I like having things that can be versatile. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to make a bunch of different stamps, and we're going to use some image-based stamps. Hildegard's going to help. We're also going to use some texture stamps. So that's what I'm going to do here with the hot glue. I want to make some sort of organic shapes that we can use for general texture in our spread as well. And there's a lot of ways that we can use stamps in our books. We can use them to create texture. We can use them to create a motif, perhaps, that ties a spread together, or perhaps ties a section of your book together. It might even be something that you want to run through the entirety of your book for some continuity. All right, so we've drawn out all of our stamps on our little foamy material here, and we're just going to go in and start cutting out some of those little detail shapes. This part can feel a little tedious, but if you surrender to the zen of tiny cutting, and we'll just pull out the negative space. Also wish to use your stamps, not necessarily just to create images, but you might want to use them as personal sigils. You can use them to develop backgrounds. And these are all nature-inspired images. Some of this I like looking at trees that have been attacked, I guess, by woodpeckers, and things like honeycomb and even wasps' nests, as well as roots and leaves. So we're going to use that to give this spread sort of an organic vibe. And I want to show you a couple of ways that you can use these stamps. Okay, so we have all of our images and textures cut out, and I'm going to adhere them to the base with a little bit of rubber cement. You could also use some spray adhesive for this. And I'm using just a little bit of leftover foam block from another project to use these. But you could also use little blocks of wood if you like. You could use cardboard or a couple layers of cardboard. Just something that's going to hold up both to a bit of adhesive and a little bit of wear and tear from you pressing on them and using them. So I like this project because you can recycle lots of little bits. Okay, so let's get to the stamping. So this is just a background I've prepared with a little bit of watercolor on some cardstock. And we're going to start with our texture stamp to start working some interest into that background. And I'm using a metallic bronze ink to load up this stamp. And you can see it's creating sort of an irregular texture. And we're going to use that same stamp again with a different ink. This time we'll be using some black on this forest green to carry some of that texture into another element of our spread. Very rooty or mossy. I love that. So now we're going to take that little vine shape that we created, and I want to bring in something bold and graphic. So we'll use it as sort of a border. And you can also extend a stamp by experimenting with how much ink you load onto the stamp. So you might prefer something really bold and graphic, and you can also get a totally different effect with just a little less pressure and a little less ink, something more ephemeral, a ghosted image. So this is just a little bit of watercolor paper that I prepared for you, just a little bit of splashing. And we're going to print some of these really bold leaves, and we'll clean off the stamp. And we're going to load it up with a different color and see what sort of effect we get. And then this is a silver metallic. Ooh, yeah, very pretty, sort of ephemeral. And you can also experiment with using light ink on dark surfaces or dark inks on light surfaces, and you'll get totally different effects. So experiment with that, have fun with that. So we're going to use sort of our woodpecker block here to create another graphic element. And lighter inks will tend to sort of sit back in a composition. So I want to try to create some space, some layering onto our honeycomb. And I'm just going to use this to develop the background a little bit. Something subtle, but something that repeats. I decided that initially that was going to be sort of a block element, but I like the idea of creating a little pocket out of it. So we're going to roll with it. Lovely. And loading up our little dots here with some silver ink, something that's really going to stand out on that dark background and really start to develop that surface. I think stamps are really fun too for people who are worried about not being able to draw or they're not a painter. This is something that you could do to develop pages that you plan to journal on top of. So if you're primarily a writing grimoire keeper, this could be a fun technique for you to try as well. You could also use this technique just to develop backgrounds if you like, and then come back to them at another time and fill them in with subject matter if that's something you like to do. So these are just some little alphabet stamps that I've taped together to make a word. It says flourish, and we're going to use that light color on a dark background again. See how that pops out like that? We're going to move on to some additional elements, experimenting with some different papers, filling up our little pocket. This is just a magazine page that I've been keeping because I loved the color and the texture, so we'll incorporate that as well. Now it's time to start putting it all together. And there we have it, a Stampalicious green magic grimoire spread. I think it's just so fun to see the variety you're able to achieve with just a couple simple shapes and a variety of colors and transparencies. Had so much fun creating this for you. I hope that it inspires you to play with stamps in a new way in your book and create some of your own designs. I want to thank you so much for being here with me for Grimoire Club on Patreon. Thank you so much for your support, Moon Babies. And until we speak again, witch on, witch boldly, and be well. Bye-bye.